Hi, welcome to Wisdom of the Black Pearl. Today we're going to talk about the 7 principles of manhood. The show is going to be sponsored by Care Property Management. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get into the show. But these 7 principles have come up because they have been principles that I have identified in our family that I feel like have guided me personally along a path that has led to a fairly comfortable place in my life. I'm very grateful for the willingness of folks like you to join in and hear what I have to say. And I offer it humbly and sincerely, and I hope it's received in the same way. You know, when you look at the term manhood, it carries a lot of baggage with it. Patriarchy and the toxic masculinity that you hear going about today. But I want to give you a different spin and a different perspective on what that is. Manhood is when a boy puts away childish behaviors and embraces the challenges, responsibilities, when he accepts the behaviors that are generally reserved for males in that family or in that culture, in that community. Now, it doesn't mean that he necessarily has to lose his identity or conform to any particular rule. It simply means that there are identifiable markers, identifiable behaviors that lets the world know that he's present and that he's accountable for his own actions. Now, these challenges and responsibilities and the like are often very different from family to family. They're different from culture to culture. They can be as specific to what you define for yourself. The most important thing is that they are clear and they are unwavering. That you hold yourself to a standard, that you're accountable for how you present and show up in the world. There will be a time in your life when people will come to rely on those things as well, because we all need each other. When my son asked me what is manhood, I was kind of hard pressed to explain it to him right off the top of my head. I really had to look inside of my family and myself and kind of ferret out what the details of my experience had been with my father and my father's father. I'm very proud to say that I knew my grandfather and I knew what he stood for, and I knew my father and I know what he stood for. And my sons know me and they know what I stand for. And while regrettably that is kind of rare these days, hopefully this information will give you some insight that you can take to heart and pass on to someone that you know. And it's not intended to be the end all. It's intended to stimulate a thought so that you can bring forth your own understanding and the weight of your resolve to how you want to show up in the world. Now, manhood is a state of being when all of the following are present. You know, first and foremost, and I think it's the most significant aspect, is that a man must acknowledge the presence of a power greater than himself. You know, that means that if he believes in God, if he believes in the universe, if he believes in vibrations, if he believes in a big oak tree, that's not for me to define or decide or hold out to you, certainly in this particular venue. For me, in my house, we'll serve the Lord Jesus Christ. And not just because that's what my parents gave me, but I have come to know the joy of my salvation for myself. The second is that he's able to take on responsibility for himself, and he participates in nation building. What I mean by nation building is if he should take a wife or a partner, or if he's just a member of a community, that he contributes something to that community, contributes something to that family, that affirms that he is present, that he is alert, that he is capable, and he is responsible, able to respond to the call if ever he should receive one call to step up. The third is that he respects the property of other men, that he doesn't trespass on people's intelligence, their physical space, their property. It's very much like the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not covet this or that or this or that. That is an indication that you're able to give respect as well as earn people's respect. The fourth principle of manhood is that he is unflappable in his resolve in the company of other men, that he is steadfast. And what I mean by that is he has a standard under which he governs himself. He has a set of rules and principles that he holds himself accountable to. And with that, he can become known and he can move among men, and will be recognized as such. The fifth characteristic of manhood is that he's not led by impulse. That is something that is indicative of immaturity, maybe a reptilian brain, underdeveloped mind, or what have you. He lacks personal discipline. Situations today call for a lot of personal discipline with all the distractions like drugs, and he must not be led by impulse. There's so many distractions today for us to move through and be unwavering in our resolve, that we can't be led by impulse. When you're led by impulse, it shows a lack of discipline, a lack of focus, and a lack of self-knowledge. By being able to govern yourself in a way that you can move through with intention and focus is the beginning of manhood. The sixth virtue or characteristic of manhood is that he understands that success and failure are but imposters. They are both lessons. There is so much to be learned from making a mistake, so much to be profited from realizing that that didn't work. And if you're willing to move beyond that temporary setback, it's a setup for you to show up and show out. And finally, he has the spiritual compass that aligns with the Creator, and he owns the consequences of his own actions. What do I mean by that? Well, the first virtue was that he believes in a power greater than him that helps him to guide him along the way. But that is enveloped, that's wrapped up with number 7, that he submits his will to the one in whom he has faith. Basically, number 1 says, who are you talking about And number 7 says, are you walking your talk? Now, these are the things that I just put out for this particular episode. And if you want to hear more, they will be broken down one at a time in my book called Escape to Manhood. I've dedicated chapters to each one. I've also added this entire podcast with additional content on Spotify and Amazon Music and Pod Index. They'll be in the links below. It's important to understand that as you take care of yourself, as you begin to establish yourself in the community of men, that they see that you're steadfast, that you're unmovable, and that you're able to provide for yourself and others. And when we look at our basic needs, they include a safe place to live, good food, and good health. And when we talk about a safe place to live, there is sometimes a need for people to help us identify where that might be. And in this case, it will be CARE Property Management in Asheville, North Carolina. At her property management company, she says, no one cares what you know, but everyone wants to know that you care. And if you call CARE Property Management, you'll be greeted with great service, kindness, and attention to detail. And those are the qualities you need from someone to help you find a place that you'll be proud to call home. We'd like to thank CARE Property Management once again for sponsoring this episode. And I'd like to ask you to like, share, and subscribe, and press the notification button. Thank you again. Remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to get started to become great. Thank you for listening.